Hi, I'm Sally Dooley, and I help women leaders to find their voice, build their strengths, sharpen their capabilities so they don't have to go through their careers feeling undermined, overlooked, and not achieving the call that they have. And this is my story.
Welcome to the Fair Business Australia podcast. Future-proof your business, impact your community. I'm your host, Rebecca Lloyd.
Welcome, Fair Business Australians, to another episode of the Fair Business Australian podcast. Ladies, are you feeling like you don't have a voice, and because of that you're feeling just a wee bit squished? Today I have the solution for you in person, my very, very, very new but very good friend, Sally Dooley. Sally is a business coach, has been in corporate for a very, very long time. She comes with a wealth of experience. I can't wait to unpack this all. Sally, welcome to the podcast today. Thank you so much for coming on board. Tell our audience, who is Sally Dooley? Why should we be paying attention to Sally Dooley? You'll find out in just a moment. Over to you, Sally.
Thank you so much, Rebecca, and thanks for having me on the show. And it's a delight to be able to spend some time hanging out with you and your audience as well. So who is Sally Dooley? What a question. I guess what's been really, really important for me in my whole career is learning and development, building leaders. I'm really passionate about leadership because it doesn't just end at the outside of the organization when you go home. If you've worked under a bad leader, a toxic leader, you know that you take that home. It affects your energy at home. It affects your energy in the community. Whereas when you work under an empowering leader who really gets you and wants to help you grow and to be your best, then it's a whole different story. Your whole confidence goes up, and there's so much research to support this. You're more resilient and you've got more to give. And so I guess my whole career has been focused on developing leaders. I've worked at really senior levels, both in private and government sectors as well. And I guess one of the things that I think for women, an area that is untapped and is still quite a bit behind the times, is the church and women's role in the church. There's often been this, and in many cases there still are, real examples of gender bias that stops women leaders from fulfilling their call, or for aiming too high, or for really developing that confidence. And we have a voice and we have a vision, and I think that even globally, the world needs the emotional intelligence that women bring and the creativity. We need that diversity of thought to kind of solve all these truly wicked problems, that are in the world today. So that's a little bit about me, Rebecca.
A little bit. Oh, my word. Where do we even start with that? I want to take back, let's rewind to one of the first things that Sally said was when you're under bad leadership. Now, that might be the church, that might be corporate, whatever that looks like. But if you are under bad leadership, whether it's a paid role or a volunteer role, what do you do? Because unless you throw a grenade like I tend to do at times and walk out or have your say or do irreparable damage, like where does the emotional intelligence that you say that women have come into play when you are under what you term as bad leadership, which might be someone that doesn't listen, someone that has a bit of an egomaniac, someone that has maybe some childhood stuff that they're projecting onto you. So how do you bring emotional intelligence into what can somewhat seem an untenable situation?
Yeah, fabulous question. And so, emotional intelligence is the capacity to understand what's going on inside you. So there's that self-awareness, which then allows you to self-regulate so that you don't just get triggered and explode, which doesn't usually have a good outcome. But it also gives you that kind of awareness of how you're perceived by other people, and how you need to respond, use your social skills to try and get a good outcome. So it helps you in all those different ways. So, depending on the extent of the toxicity of the leader that you're under, being able to try and help them build their self-awareness. I call this coaching upwards, and it's kind of a bit of a wondering out loud. One of the things that we often see and it's probably the number one thing that women say to me in my workshops and in my executive coaching as well. I just feel like I can't get my voice heard. Either I'm not invited to the decision-making tables, or if I am, when I try and speak up, it gets drowned out. And often, it's more senior male leaders that are doing that. So this kind of coaching upwards or wandering out loud is having a conversation with that person who habitually interrupts women and people in general and talks over them, and kind of make an observation sometimes about someone else, kind of like, hey, I was wondering, in that meeting that we just had, Rebecca tried to share a really great point, and I wonder if she's feeling a bit shut down, like perhaps she didn't get to do that. So rather than saying, you just shut down Rebecca, that's dreadful. When people are told things, they tend to go on the defensive, they put up a block. But when you invite them into a conversation by asking questions and trying to build that awareness, then you can be quite influential. And that takes emotional intelligence, because you've got to calm your own emotion around it to be able to come into that conversation with really good intention of trying to get a solution rather than, having a say. Does that make sense?
It does make sense. So what kind of woman would you find that would be resilient enough to go through the self-awareness part that is required in coaching, and then is prepared to go through the exploration of someone else's possible lack of resilience in those situations? What kind of people actually come to you for coaching?
Oh, look, I get all sorts of people who come, both men and women. Women just happens to be the favourite space that and I guess because of my own story and what I've learned through years of counselling and dealing with some big issues, I guess I feel like I speak more to women and understand some of those shared experiences. But I think that anybody can, use these skills to try and get a good outcome. But of course, we can't control the outcome. We can only control our part of what we're willing to do. So we can try and bring that self-awareness. We can even be more assertive and say, I understand you really wanted to get your point across, and not but. We never use but. And, what I need you to do, or what I would prefer you to do, is to, let me finish my sentence. And then I'd love to hear from you. So it's in no way suggesting that we should just lie down and take it, but more about looking for where you can influence, starting with that gently kind of conversation. Hey, I just noticed, I was just wondering, into the more assertive. And then at the end of the day, if you're still not getting traction, then you need to perhaps ask yourself, is this an environment that I'm willing to stay in? And sometimes vote with your feet and find somewhere else. And, that's and I have done that on occasion, where I don't feel I'm in a role that's adding value to the organisation. It's not adding value to me. It's not adding value to my family because, it's distressing. And then be willing to kind of go, okay, what other options are there? And I think that's part of one of the other things that many women talk to me about, and which I have done, and possibly still doing, was, we put other people first. And yes, there's a good dimension of that, but if it becomes at our cost, and if it stops us from bringing or fulfilling, the calling that we have on our lives, and by calling, I mean that kind of place of alignment where our natural strengths, the skills that we've developed, the subject matter, our life story, where it all just sort of comes together in this kind of congruence, which is where we're created to really be able to shine and to do our best. And I think that when we have that sense of what that is and start a journey on finding it, that's when we're most fulfilled ourselves, but also of most value to the world. Yeah.
So good. So why have you decided to, choose my words carefully here, why have you decided, Sally Dooley, to bring up, your words, not mine, the gender bias in the church? Why would you not stay in what is already quite a progressive movement in corporate or even in the public service sector? Is it that you're going to be helping women in this space who may also attend a religious body and feel like they're very well heard and quite well represented here? There's an HR, all these different things. But then when it comes to their personal life or their, over here, the social dynamics seem to be quite different. People say there's not a hierarchical system at times in certain church bodies, but there certainly is. They're just not as well defined. So,
Yes.
So why have you chosen to bridge that gap for women, to help them in the corporate space, public service space, but also to help them in a space that really has a lot of tradition behind it, and that is quite well backed up by certain passages in Scripture?
Yeah, absolutely. And I guess why I have chosen that is because my own career has straddled both the church and the more corporate or government sectors. So I have worked as been employed as a pastor, as well as doing the leadership stuff in my current kind of focus. But I guess what I see is that even our very thinking has, when we've grown up in the church, we spend a lot of time in the church, has been shaped by this kind of somewhat less than, the men. And when that becomes part of our thinking and our mindset, then we carry that same belief system into our work in the private sector or government or wherever you happen to be. So it's not just about how it perhaps affects us in what we might put our hand up to volunteer for in a church context, but it also, I just think, is what has influenced the sorts of things that we know about women in the workforce, whether it's whatever sector you're in. And it's that we struggle to get our voice heard. That leadership has an identity. And what I mean by that is, when you become a leader, it's not just about stepping up and doing things. It's about perceiving yourself as a leader. I am now in this role a person of influence. And, all the gender bias research will show us that when we think leader, it's a white male that jumps into our mind. So as women, we're initially battling this identity in ourselves, and then we have to go that little bit extra to demonstrate it to other people as well. And so it's all this mindset stuff that I really like to focus on.
I give you full points for choosing to straddle the two different things. I don't know about you, ladies. Some of you who would classify yourself to be in that religious sphere of, you go to church, all this kind of stuff. Me personally, some of the things that Sally is saying are quite triggering because I can remember factual things that have actually happened where I did feel less than, I didn't feel like I had a voice. I mean, I made myself heard because that's just my personality, but it didn't mean that I was actually had any influence in the situation. I just threw a grenade and everyone knew that I was really upset. So, if you are coaching someone who does have a faith-based background,
yeah,
and this is we didn't practice this question beforehand, so I might be throwing you a total curveball here. How do you reconcile very, very traditional scriptures that talk about women being silent and just stay home and have babies and on all this very, very traditional stuff that, depending on your understanding and how much you've researched the scriptures, and I have researched them a lot, but I won't go into that. How do you do that with your coaching clients, Sally? Because that is going to receive a lot of pushback in that area, that potentially you're asking people to be rebellious or to, all those lovely buzzwords that unfortunately religious people tend to use just as much as the very, very far left, the far right do exactly the same thing.
Exactly. So we've got these echo chambers that don't listen to each other. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think there's a few things in that, Rebecca. I think, first of all, I would say that, a lot of the Bible and Bible scholars approach the Bible in the sense of, what is contextual, and, the need to interpret through the lens of what was going on, at the time that was written, as well. So there's the contextual as well as the application. What is it from that? What's the principle perhaps that we have to apply? And, there are some fantastic resources out there. I was just listening to a podcast by a guy called Chris Valentin, who's written a brilliant book, whose name totally escapes me at the minute. But he just goes through all of those Bible references and the scriptures, and looks at the context of them all and unpacks them in that way. And, for me, I think that, God creates everybody. This is my view, for purpose. He creates them on purpose, and he creates them for a purpose. And if he's given us gifts of leadership, if that's one of our strengths, then he's put that strength within us for a reason. And I think that every woman deserves to be able to use her strengths to fulfill that calling, whatever that calling might actually look like. And so I guess that's why I'm willing to, in some ways, come right back to basics, starting a new business as it is, because it's a different audience, because I think that there's something that I've got to add in that space. And I've had to go through that journey of being recovering. I call myself a recovering people pleaser, a recovering perfectionist. I'm recovering from a lot. And, I've been on this journey for about 12 years, and I can just see the difference that doing this work has given me, and the opportunities that it's created in my business as well.
So good. All right. So the ladies that are watching, I know you're thinking, well, this sounds all well and good, Sally Dooley. However, do you have any evidence that this is actually going to work for me? Because you're asking me to go up against a whole traditional set of things. So can you relay some stories of some of the coaching clients that you've had in the past, even if it's in a corporate sector, because you are the same person no matter what environment you're in. As Christians, we're supposed to be a barometer, not a thermometer. So I'll just leave that one parked there. Can you tell us some stories about different coaching clients that you've had, the successes, but preface it with how they were when they first came to you, and the challenges that they were having, and then what they were after they bridged with Sally Dooley.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you. So I think that, a lot of the women that come in to see me, they're feeling squashed. They're feeling that they don't have a voice. They're feeling that they don't know how, to try and influence. And, what we know from psychology, also from neuroscience as well, is that, it's our core beliefs that influence our thinking, or what psychologists call our self-talk, which, by the way, they estimate we have 50,000 conversations with ourselves every day. And for the average person, or about 70% of people on average, 70% of it is negative. What do you do that for? You're not going to be good. Not helpful. And so all of that then influences our emotional state, which influences our behavior. So these are the things that drive our behavior. So in coaching, we look at, what is that self-talk? What is that thinking? Is it about, I should be seen and not heard? Or is it about, I don't want to be judged, so I'm not going to speak up? What are those kind of things that we're telling ourselves? And we also look at emotions, because emotions are data. There is important data as numbers, because they let us know what's going on inside of us, and we can read them in other people, maybe not always accurately, but we can see them, and we take that in as data. And then we use that to go, okay, if this thinking is generating this emotion, which is generating this behavior, how do I change the way that I think? And so one of the biggest ones is speaking in public. So people go, well, if I, speak up at a meeting, if I put myself forward to, to take on a stretch challenge where I'm actually presenting in front of a lot of a room, what if I'm going to be judged? What if I make a mistake? What if I'm a total disaster? And all that thinking, of course, creates nerves, and we get up there and we blurt, or we forget what we want to say, and it's not great. So the reframe that I like to help people understand is that, what if it's, instead of I succeed or I fail, which is a heavy duty thing, what if it's an opportunity to learn? What if I take this on and then I get feedback and then I know how to improve? Or the other thing is, I often ask them to think about those people who never speak at a meeting. So they never contribute. How do you think we could judge those people, Rebecca? How might you judge somebody who never contributes?
Probably not well.
Yeah. Give us some words.
Non-committal, apathetic, shy. So why are you even bothering being here? That's just my personality.
Absolutely. And they're the things that people say to me, lazy, not invested, haven't prepared. So the reality is, we will always be judged, and we will always be judging, because that is the way our brain makes. We make these snap judgments. So we can't control how people are going to judge us, but what we can control is the information that we give them. So if I don't speak up, I'm an unknown quantity. You might judge me as not invested. But if I even ask a question that's vaguely related to the topic that we're talking about, or if I make a good point, then I'm on the radar as a person who's invested and has an opinion. And so it's often helping people take these small incremental steps to go, okay, so at the next meeting, prepare some questions that you'd like to throw in, or prepare a couple of statements. And we do that, and we acknowledge the fact that we didn't die and nobody judged us. And it builds our sense of confidence. So our confidence is not just a warm feeling. It is our belief in our capacity to be successful at something. So the thing we can lever there is our belief. And we build our belief by acknowledging what we've done well. So here's some homework for everyone out there that I give to my coaching clients. Every day, identify 5 things that you did well. Just 5 things. It could be have a good conversation with a team member, or for me, stay focused and sit at my desk for 50 minutes without getting up. That's a stretch for me. Whatever it might be, and just acknowledge yourself. And that grows your confidence and boosts your willingness to then take a risk a little bit further next time. Does that make sense?
Yes, ma'am. It certainly does. It certainly does. So for women who feel like they do have a voice, but they're not very good at making that voice be influential, or navigating that gender bias that they feel they're experiencing in corporate or in a religious faith-based setting, how can you specifically help people? I understand that you have some coaching going on right now, only for the first 5 people. So pay attention, ladies. What have we got for people today?
Well, because I'm wanting to reach out to different people than I currently am, I have what I'm calling my ridiculous offer, because it's less than 10% of my corporate coaching rates. So that is pretty ridiculous. So for $99, you get 3 1-hour coaching sessions with me. And then plus you get to choose a self-awareness profile. These ones you have to be accredited to use them. They're not pop quizzes. One is around entrepreneurial thinking and looks at the personality traits and the skills that you need to do that. And the other one is on emotional intelligence. So we do rate higher than men on all dimensions of emotional intelligence, except for self-regulation, where we are on par with men. So, but how can we use this emotional intelligence as a superpower to really be influential and to fulfill that call that we have. And so I'm offering a choice of either of those at the cost of $75, which is cost price. In other words, what it cost me to procure that and set you up and all the business that goes around with that.
Wow. Wow. Well, that's just a bit of a no-brainer. You can probably count there's going to be 4 left because I'll probably take that one, I reckon. That sounds pretty jolly good to me. So being able to understand yourself better, being able to empathize more and get other people to understand themselves better through the communication, being able to maybe go for a raise because you have better negotiation skills. Yes.
Totally.
Being able to communicate more effectively in a faith-based setting where you can't just ask for a raise because there is no such thing as a raise if you're a volunteer. It really sounds like it's a very, very much of a no-brainer. But I asked you if there's something that if there is a lady here that's not quite ready to take that journey yet, but she just wants to dip her toe in the water, what can they get today by going through to the website and signing up?
Yes. Look, there's a couple of things there. There's an ebook, and what that does is it talks about some of the research about what women experience in the workforce and just 5 ways that we can actually counteract that. And so that's got some useful strategies in there. I also have a 1-pager coaching questions. And, as leaders, when we use a coaching approach, we often get the most out of our people. We get greater engagement. We're actually teaching people how to think rather than doing the thinking for them. So that's a good resource as well to just kind of go, well, I might not know how to have a full-on coaching conversation, but I can always just start asking questions more and notice the engagement and also the responses that you get.
So good. Oh, well, if you haven't yet gone through to the website, you can see the link in the show notes or in the description. Please do get along, ladies. We absolutely need to be able to stand firm during these times, to have our voice heard during these times. Never before in history has it been so important for women to have a voice and to be well heard. And if we leave our men standing by themselves, that's half of the population not standing up. And so we must use that emotional intelligence to get our point across without throwing a Rebecca-style grenade. And so you probably can count that's only 4 left because I will be taking number 1, Miss Sally Dooley. Thank you. Thank you very much for joining us today on the show, folks. I look forward to seeing you again. If you have a great business idea or a community initiative that you'd love to get out to 120,000 and growing audience, would love to hear from you. Do reach out to us. Once again, you're awesome. Have a great day. Chat soon and God bless.
Have you got a great business or community initiative you'd like to share with our podcast audience? We'd love to hear from you. Reach out to us today at fairbusinessaustralia.com.au.